When you hear him speak about these topics, how can any working person disagree with someone like him and agree with someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg? Greetings and welcome, and today I want to talk about James O'Brien's podcast with Mick Lynch. Any of you guys haven't heard it, I implore you, go listen to it. It's on the normal podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify. I'm sure someone's probably chucked it on YouTube by now. But yeah, I just done a drive up to Crawley and back. I just listened to the whole thing. I literally turned it off about 5 minutes ago, and I thought, hang on, I need to talk about this while it's fresh in my head. But fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I love this guy. I love this guy. I'll talk about some of the things that they talked about in the podcast, but I guess my overriding take, the thing that I brought from the podcast as soon as I switched it off was, oh my God, this country is crying out for someone like Mick Lynch in politics. It really, really are. Someone who is he's so articulate, and he can just describe complex matters in a very simple way for someone like me, your average Joe, your average van driver, to understand. He's not a career politician. He's worked all his life, and he's been a unionist all his life. He's been in the union, so he spent his whole life trying to make life better for the working person, trying to get a better deal for the working person. And oh my God, do we need someone like him? I mean, this guy is just an example. There's lots of people like him, and these are the sort of people that we should be flooding our political parties with, not fucking career politicians. People that care, people that know industry inside out. He knows the railways inside out. He knows, because of his position in the unions, he knows various other industries inside out. The way he talks about the problems in the NHS, the problems in engineering, you know, he knows the problems and he knows how to sort them out. But he's also, I think, would be a fantastic person to clear up this ridiculous notion that we've had over the last 10 years that people like Jacob Rees-Mogg have the interests of the working class. It's mental. People like Boris Johnson, people think that people like him have their working people's interests at heart. The guy that spends 2,500 quid a roll on wallpaper, you think he understands the problems of the working people over people like Mick Lynch? You know, I could just imagine him on the next campaign trail for the next election, doing interview, getting his voice across to the public, doing debates with bloody Liz Truss and Sunak. Oh my God, he'd destroy them. He'd absolutely destroy them. And this is what I was thinking about during the whole podcast. So, I mean, they go through his background at the start and everything, and he grew up in the 70s in London. He was also talking about how in the 70s, when you leave school, there was always a trade, an apprenticeship to go into. We've lost that now, haven't we? You know, there was always a trade. If you wanted to be an engineer, you wanted to be a plasterer, you know, there was something there for you, and there was a job there and a trade that would see you through life. That's falling apart now. And then obviously it went into the 80s, and you know, Thatcher destroyed all that and made millions of people unemployed, and I guess that's where his sort of politics came from. But yeah, the guy's incredible, and I just really think he is exactly what we need. And there's more people like him. That's what I'm saying. This is who we should be flooding the Labour Party with. And all the way through, I just couldn't help it. I know it's a stupid, pointless thing to think about because he's not going to be the next Labour leader, but I just kept imagining someone like him as Labour leader. And I guess it's hard, you know, because I try and defend Starmer the best I can, but it's difficult. It's difficult. Sorry about that. Camera just flipped down while I'm on a red light. I'll just adjust that. But yeah, I know I've said that we need to bring politics to the centre. But I don't see someone like Mick Lynch as far left. You know, and this is the problem that the right-wing media and people like Mog and people like Boris Johnson have been doing for the last 10 years. They're trying to portray someone like Mick Lynch as far left, as a communist. How many times do you get thrown, if you're chatting about something in a comment section or something, you get thrown communist at you? I mean, Mick Lynch has had communists thrown at him by bloody Ricky Dicky Madeley, isn't he? Ridiculous. Communist. The man's not a communist. And this is one thing that he describes so well, that the fact that someone who has views like him is not a communist. He doesn't want to bring down the establishment. He realizes that someone has to own the means of production. He's not trying to bring down the establishment. He's not trying to bring down the state. He wants a state, but he just wants a fairer taxation. He wants a fairer society. He wants an NHS that's properly funded and working people that are not used and abused on ridiculous short-term contracts and have decent pay and a pension and are looked after and holiday pay. All these things. That's all these things. These are not far left politics. And this is why he would be just incredible as a politician right now and getting these messages across, because he articulates them in such a way that you can't disagree with him. When you hear him speak about these topics, how can any working person disagree with someone like him and agree with someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg when he talks about these things? It's just, socialism is like a scary word now, isn't it? You know, it's just the right-wing media and Mogg and all that have just made it like a label that is just scaring people off. And Mick Lynch doesn't actually call for socialism. He calls it the labour movement, the old-fashioned labour values of work, just looking after the working person. That's what it's all about. Just looking after the working person. That's not far left politics. It's really not. It's really not. And, you know, a lot of people will say, well, you know, we had that in the Labour Party with Jeremy Corbyn and the country didn't vote for it. I've said it myself, but I don't know. People just got turned off by Jeremy Corbyn for whatever reason. The right-wing media attack on him. I think he made mistakes. I think he said things that he shouldn't have. His foreign policy turned. I think that was the main thing that turned people off about the guy, because, you know, a lot of people voted for him in 2017. But his foreign policy, his policy on nuclear disarmament and things like that, and leaving NATO, it scares a lot of people. And he still has that, whether it's right or wrong. You know, I voted for the guy. I wanted the guy to win. But whether it's right or wrong, he has that essence of champagne socialist, which working people get put off by. I'm not saying that's what he is, or that's it, but he had that. And I think the difference with someone like Mick Lynch, working on the railways his whole life, being in unions, just the way he talks, he sounds like the guy down the pub, your mate, the one who's got your back. That's what he sounds like. He sounds like someone who has got your back. And Jeremy Corbyn didn't have that as much. And, you know, because I think domestically, their politics are obviously pretty similar. You know, nationalisation of railways and fairer taxation on big business and looking after the working person. Their domestic policies are the same. But for some reason, Jeremy Corbyn just got people's backs up. And a lot of that was right-wing media, and we know that. But anyway, I've discussed Jeremy Corbyn enough. But this rolls on to the difference with someone like Mick Lynch and Keir Starmer, who we have as current Labour leader. Now, this is the thing. This is pointless conversation thinking that Mick Lynch is going to be the next Labour leader. He's not. Keir Starmer will lead Labour into the next election. We've got to deal with that. And that's why I've tried, you know, not try my best to not slate the guy. Because we live with a first past the post voting system with this country. We're always only going to have the choice of the two parties, and whoever is leader of the Labour Party will be the better option to govern this country for working people. That I just have to deal with that. So I try not to slate the guy, but it's hard. It's hard. I mean, I might be wrong, but just the tactics that he's using. I mean, at the end of the day, he needs to win, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? He needs to win the election. So the tactics he's using is trying to get the votes from those constituencies that he needs, and he does get Labour voters' backs up, but I think they'll still vote for him, and he needs to try and get those ones in the constituencies. But for me, he doesn't come across sincere. He doesn't come across honest, which is the complete opposite to someone like Mick Lynch. I don't know where Keir Starmer stands on nationalisation of the railways. I don't know where he stands on Brexit. I don't know where he stands on any of this stuff. And maybe it's the wrong tactic to start declaring all these things 2 years before an election. But I think politics has got to go back to sincerity. It has to go back to honesty. And Keir Starmer is not oozing that. He's the complete opposite for me. I don't know what the guy is about. I need some honesty. I need him to stand up in an interview and be honest. And he's not. But maybe standing up and being honest won't win him an election. I don't know. I really don't know. But what kind of crazy world do we live in where you can't just be honest about what policies you want to bring forward? But that's the stupid system that we're in, isn't it? If we had a proportional representation system, every party would be honest about what they want to do, because they know that those voters will vote for it. I don't know. What's your thoughts, guys? Have you listened to the podcast? Did you enjoy it? I found it absolutely fascinating, and I just think all political parties are crying out for people like Mick Lynch to represent them. We need people like him in politics. He's not going to be the next Labour leader, but I implore him to run. Run at least as an MP and be on the front bench, because we need people like him. We really do. That's it from me. Thank you for all your likes. Thank you for all your subscribes, and I'll see you next time. Take care.